Motivation is a mood, whereas consistency is a system. It's those things that you need to show up and do for yourself because no one's going to tell you to.
Welcome back to On the Horizon. This is Melrose Michaels. I am your host, and I'm here to share what's worked for me in building my adult creator business to try to make building yours just a little bit easier. Let's get into today's episode.
Have you ever asked for consistency advice and been met with just post daily? Here is why that is garbage advice. Because if that is all that it took, we would already be posting consistently. And let's be honest, being consistent in general as like a topic of conversation, it's not sexy, it's boring. And in all seriousness, I have spoken on this topic a lot from a lot of different angles. So check our YouTube channel, our blog resources, or even some of our older podcast episodes if you still want more on this topic after today, because truly it is probably one of the most things we've spoken about. And that's probably because consistency is kind of like this unachievable elephant in every creator's room, so to speak. And there are many ways of tackling it depending where your personal biggest challenges lie. So with that being said, I want to move on and just say that we all love collectively this idea of discipline. At least if you follow our channels, our whole approach to being an adult creator is taking it very seriously as an adult entrepreneur. So, we love this idea of discipline until it's 7 a.m. and you wake up exhausted from a bad night's sleep and you are unmotivated or maybe even just doubting yourself and you have content to film and fans to respond to and deadlines that are overdue. No one is watching you. No one's making you do the things. And yet, your business depends on you doing the things. That is the reality of being your own boss. This isn't exclusive to adult content creation or adult content creators, but it is very prominent in our line of work. So today I'm going to kind of show you or talk about how to stay consistent even when you don't feel like it, how to create discipline without punishment, how to build momentum when motivation is just nowhere to be found, and how to run your adult content business like a high performance machine without burning out. And I also want to plug here because burnout is probably the second biggest topic we talk about. There's a great YouTube video we put out on our channel about a formula to combat and overcome burnout and come back from burnout with a month's worth of content. So if that's interesting to you, definitely check out our YouTube channel for that. So I want to kind of clarify that this is not about hustle culture. It's about self-respect and structure and kind of long-term planning. And if you've been struggling with showing up lately, this episode should be exactly what you need. So why does consistency matter more than motivation? I want to get something clear right away, and that is motivation is a mood, whereas consistency is a system. So motivation is it's unreliable. It comes and it goes, but consistency is what builds trust with your audience, grows your income as a result because they know you're going to show up, they know you're going to post, and therefore they have no problem spending. And it shapes your brand because if you aren't posting consistently, if you are not in the places you say you'll be, if you aren't going live at the time you say you're going live, your brand is not one people will recognize because it's not online or where it's supposed to be when you said it would be. This is a huge thing that builds brand over time. And in the adult industry, we don't have, managers breathing down our neck or people to report to. We are the managers. That's why the channel is SWCEO. We are CEOs. We are the brand. We are also the product. And what that means is that consistency becomes a form of self-leadership. And to some extent, you can even say self-parenting. Like it's those things that you need to show up and do for yourself because no one's going to tell you to. And discipline isn't about force. Like I want to make that clear. It's actually very loving. So one of my favorite quotes of all time is that discipline is the highest form of self-respect. And that has stayed with me for a very long time. And it's been misquoted, or maybe I'm misquoting it, but it's also been quoted as discipline is the highest form of love, of self-love. And in saying that, you're basically saying, like, I believe that my future self is enough to show up today for them, for that future version of me. And I've talked about this in the past, but there's some magic in pretending that you are already the person that you want to become. Like, I personally don't believe or subscribe to the idea of fake it until you make it, because I think that's really not all that helpful. But I do subscribe to the idea of clarifying who your future self is, what that person does on a daily basis, and then doing those things today. So we've talked about this before, but it's similar to be, do, have instead of have, do, be, right? Most people go through life with the behavior have, do, and then be. They think once they have X thing, a nicer camera or a bigger following or whatever it is, that they will do X behavior, then I'll make reels daily, then I'll post more consistently, whatever. And then they'll be the person they want to have become. Whereas in all, actuality in real life, the way you become who you want is to be the person you want to become today, do the behaviors they would do, and then you'll have the things that person would have. So people often get it backwards. And I think that it's really important to know that and to frame the rest of this conversation with that as we continue to have it. So circling back to the point, systems support consistency more than discipline ever will, right? And later in this episode, we're going to get more deeply into the systems. So I want you to kind of stay with me for that. But I'm going to walk you through the system I use, myself, and also talk about inside CEO Society, our private community for adult creators. That makes consistency easier, even when your energy is low or your mental health isn't perfect. And I'll share the tips kind of directly from members of CEO Society as well on how they personally stay consistent with their own, content creator careers. Before we get into that, I want to dismantle a few myths. So one of the big myths about consistency is I need to feel inspired to create. No, you don't. This is a lie. Don't believe it. Don't buy in. You actually need structure. Inspiration is a bonus. It's not a requirement for doing the thing. Inspiration is very similar to lightning. It's something that may strike, but you don't get access to it on demand. You cannot demand that lightning strikes. It doesn't work that way. And it's very similar in this aspect to motivation. Motivation is a fleeting feeling. You can't count on it to show up when you want it to. So you can't rely on inspiration in that same way. You can't rely on inspiration to be what drives you forward or your creator business forward, because it's likely to not be there. So that is myth number one. Myth number two, if I miss a day, I've already failed. So this is wrong. Missing a day does not break consistency. Quitting after you miss a day is what breaks consistency. All right. So consistency is actually about averages. It is not a perfection, be all end all game. And I tend to be like most people, very black and white in terms of my thinking. And I can even draw on an example for this. Like when I got back into personal training, when I was getting ready to shoot the 2 scenes I did for Slade, I remember my personal trainer telling me that he didn't have availability for me to work out on Mondays. So instead of the days I wanted, which were Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I was going to have to do my training on Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. And I don't know why. Like, it's just the human brain doing human brain things. But the thought of not having that perfect ideal schedule made me not even want to start personal training. Like, I remember him telling me the availability and me just being like, well, that's not going to work. I guess I have to work out on my own. Like, it was just so silly to have such black and white, all or nothing feelings towards this thing. And that was my initial reaction. And for so many of us, that's how it actually is. And I just realized, like, I don't have to have perfect conditions. And I tend to not want to start something unless there are perfect conditions. But the reality is life will never provide you perfect conditions. Like, that is why life can be lifing sometimes. It's always going to be chaotic or unpredictable to some degree for all of us. So in order to thrive in the reality of that, you need to start imperfectly because you simply need to start. Like this is such a big one. So if you miss a day or you skip something or you put off a task or you don't complete the entire to-do list, that is okay. The sum of your progress as a whole is actually what moves you forward. It's not 365 perfect days. And to drive this point home, like, guys, I rarely have perfect days. I live and breathe this. My team will tell you I bottleneck tasks or I'll batch create everything all at once and then I won't revisit that task for a month. Like, it just appears like I do because on the outside, all of my imperfect days add up to consistent execution over time. And so I want to make that clear to you because your consistency, as it appears to the outside world, will actually be a lot of inconsistent days, starting, beginning again, and tackling things and moving forward. Like on the inside, it won't be perfect. On the outside, it will be consistent. And I want you to know that going into this.
If you're enjoying this podcast episode so far, please take one moment to share it with another one of your adult content creator friends, because you know what the rule is here. We do not gatekeep, and we want to make as many adult creators' businesses as easy as possible. And you sharing this episode with them might do exactly that. Thanks so much in advance.
Myth number 3, and I only wanted to list 3, but discipline means being hard on yourself. Absolutely not. And oh my God, did I live and breathe this? And I even preached it to some degree in our earlier days on our channels too. But this is so untrue. Like real discipline is actually very kind. Real discipline has a lot of flexibility in it. And real discipline contains a lot of grace. You know, it is there for safety and support of you. Consistency means, hey, I didn't tackle, the third, fourth, fifth thing on my to-do list, but I can move those to tomorrow and I'll be okay. Like having less rigidity, even though you have a disciplined schedule, having more flexibility, even though you have a disciplined schedule, that is what discipline looks like. It's not being hard on yourself or beating yourself up when you don't get through all of the things. Now, I want to also go into kind of a proper framework. So there's kind of 4 pillars that I attribute to consistency. So the first one is routine before results. The second one is energy mapping. The third one is kind of accountability and feedback loops. And the fourth one is habit pairing. So the first one I'm going to kind of dive into is routine before results. So there's a beautiful quote. I forget who to attribute it to, but they say, you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. So the first system that I would suggest everyone creates for themselves listening to this episode is creating a minimal viable routine. So a minimum viable routine are examples of things that you can do no matter what. The bare minimum you will do every single day. And make it so simple. 3 things, 2 things, whatever it looks like. So a minimum viable routine might look like I post 1 thing to OF every day, whether that's a selfie, whether that's a topless pic, whether that's a full video, whatever. I post 1 thing every day. Another example would be I film every Monday. That could be one of your minimum viable routine things. Another one could be I check my DMs from 9 to 10 a.m. That could be a minimum viable routine thing. And then you have your 3. Maybe that's your 3. So for me personally, my current, as of this moment, as of filming and recording this, minimum viable routine consists of I make 1 sexting set per day that I'll use with fans and DMs so that I have some content to monetize in DMs. And then I do the 3 most urgent or important tasks on my Asana board. That's my task management board. So those are the 2 core minimum viable things I will do every single day. And knowing that I've gotten those 2 things done or out of the way, everything else has flexibility. Everything else can be moved, rescheduled, reworked into my schedule for that same day. Everything else can be flexible. And you want the minimum viable routine system in place because it makes it doable even on your lowest energy days. And I definitely advise you to kind of start small with this, whatever your 2, 3 things every day are. And then if things come up that you notice, like I can automate that or I can optimize that, that's what you'll do when you can. So like, whereas making the sexting sets for me right now, a little bit filming every day, that seems to at the moment be more available to me in terms of my capacity rather than batch filming those, which is what I used to do. At a different season of my life, maybe a month from now, I'll be back to filming those again because maybe that will be more, more fitting into my workflows at that time. But for the moment, this is how I do it. And then when I say optimize where you can, that's kind of what I'm talking about. When life changes or your business changes and you can optimize differently, maybe this one task you used to do weekly or daily, you can now batch do on Mondays, then you optimize when you can. And also just a shameless plug, but if you guys are, writing content or planning content calendars or scripting your videos, coming up with captions for PPVs, whatever, if that's your bottleneck, you already know I and many creators like me, we use GPTs.ai to help streamline some of that process, which is also very useful when you're not feeling inspired, because again, that is a fleeting feeling. And it's one of those things that kind of keeps me consistent, especially when I'm not creative. But the bottom line is that you want to create this first routine that doesn't rely on your mood, and then you'll use those tools to support that system. So again, routine before results, having a minimum viable routine, 2 or 3 things you can do every single day. And if those are the only 2 or 3 things you do that day, that's a win, and that's okay. Next, second thing is the energy mapping. So tracking when you feel most focused or most drained. Are you a morning person? Are you a night owl? You kind of use these insights to batch the right tasks at the right time for you to perform them. So for me, if I'm getting enough sleep, I know that from 5 a.m. to 6:30 a.m., that window is super focused and I can get a lot done because those are really uninterrupted hours. There's no notifications going off. My household is still asleep. I love those crazy early morning hours as so long as I'm sleeping. But also, when I'm not getting enough sleep, I completely forego those to prioritize rest. And that's kind of, again, aligned with that flexibility we keep talking about. Right now, I'm not doing deep work hours. I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. right now. I'm getting up at 6:30 instead. And so I'm foregoing at the moment for sleep. But this is a great example of that. If you know when you have energy or that you're creative in the afternoon and not in the morning, you will plan for that high energy to do high energy required things. So, for example, if high energy for you is when you can really, pound out filming, pun intended, or creating in general content, reels, Instagram stuff, social stuff, whatever, or responding to DMs, those are kind of my high energy tasks. Or low energy admin work, scheduling, editing, responding to DMs, etc. So in that, it's going to be very personal to you. Maybe your high energy stuff is admin work. I go through phases where my high energy stuff is all admin work and my low energy stuff is actually filming and creating. So depending on how you categorize that or when those things make sense with your energy to do during those days, that's how you want to map your day or block times to do those things during your day. You're going to build your schedule essentially around your natural rhythm and not what other people say you should be doing or what social media says you should be doing. You need to be doing what's actually useful for you specifically. Number 3 is accountability and feedback loops. These are so powerful. Another quote I love is that discipline loves witnesses. I love that. I love that. I love that. It's one of the reasons I post after all my personal training sessions to Instagram, because if I post that I'm working out, one, I feel good because I completed a workout and it's this little dopamine hit for me to post it, of course. But at the same time, my audience knows I've just worked out and then I have, naughtier workout content that I will then send out on OF or on my spicy platform. So everything feeds each other, but discipline loves witnesses. So you can tell someone, close to you what your immediate goals are. You can text or DM a creator friend. You can join, our community CEO Society. We have creators who post their goals there for the week or the month so that they have accountability within their own peer community. And it's not meant to be perfect. It's just to stay present and intentional. And also we have co-working spaces every day so you can knock out admin work on a group Zoom call with other creators. And it's super low pressure. Everyone's muted. It's just kind of mirroring other people or body doubling, which is something we're just doing on this call while we chip away at our tasks. So if that's useful for you, again, you can join ceosociety.app for free. Just head over there. If you're a solo creator, especially, self-accountability rituals will be really powerful. So one thing you could do is weekly check-ins. This is to audit your short-term goals and efforts. So what you did this week, did you land where you meant to? How far off were you? Another thing you can do is vision reminders. I think of these as reminders of your long-term goals so that you know you're always moving directionally in the right place. Because long-term goals are so much harder to hit. You know, the weekly check-ins, short-term stuff, those are habits and behaviors you do every day. Long-term goals are kind of like trying to steer your boat or your ship in the right direction. And like sometimes we float a little off course and we need to re-steer it in the right direction. That's what these vision reminders should look like for you. Then another useful thing to think about is daily done lists, not just to-do lists. I think this is really important because you want to visually see and like properly appreciate what you've completed and not just what remains, left to do. And you don't want to shame yourself for what's left undone. You want to celebrate the things that you got finished. So for me in Asana, every time I check off a task for the day, what have you, I'll go back at the end of the day and I'll filter my task list to show me completed items only instead of the incomplete, to see like all of the things I did and how much I moved the needle. In recognizing that is really important because we often look at our to-do list, but we never look at our done lists. And then it can just feel like you're not making progress. You're not getting that reward from having done the thing. So this is a powerful thing to circle back to. Now, the next one is habit pairing. This is more often called habit stacking. And this is just making your habits easier, essentially, by stacking them on top of other things you do. So, for example, maybe when you film your explicit content, right after you film sexting drips to use in DMs while you're sexting with fans. Or maybe when you're answering DMs in the morning, you do that while you're sipping your coffee. So when you think coffee, you're also on the keyboard doing DMs. Or maybe you do your content calendar on Sundays, and then immediately after doing your content calendar, you script that first week's video or that first video you're going to film. It's basically meant to like make these tasks feel like second nature to you so that this one specific task goes together with the next specific task. So consistency becomes easier when it's connected to something you already do. So for example, I always put on moisturizer right after I wash my face. It's like part of the routine as a whole. Lots of these individual habits stacked together and tied to one another, which makes them easier to do and get done. And even before that, if I went through my whole like nighttime routine, there's a bunch of habits stacked in there. It's to brush the teeth, it's to wash the face, it's to do the moisturizer, it's whatever. It's all of the things. So if you think about habit stacking, not just in your personal life or routines, but rather apply that to some of your business life and routines, that becomes much easier in terms of consistency. Now, I also passed along this question to some of our CEO Society members. And I wanted to just expand it because I'm only one lens. Obviously, I only know what works for me. So I asked some of the creators inside CEO Society to share the things that actually helps them stay consistent. And I pulled just 3 of the responses to make sure I included them today in today's episode. But Muse Nadia had said that when I want to disappear, I anchor into this. The version of me that I'm becoming doesn't just create when it's easy. She leads when it's inconvenient. So I love this because it simplifies that inner monologue with ourselves where we're like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or oh, I'll do this, whatever. Like having that mantra to anchor to, the version of me I'm becoming doesn't just create when it's easy. I think that's super powerful. I thought that was really good advice. Another creator inside CEO Society said, this is from Lolo Sparkles, even though this analogy bothers me for obvious reasons, because who would want to eat a beautiful elephant? She says that she reminds herself there is only one way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time, and then to just keep going. Or I make myself laugh by thinking about finding Nemo and just keep swimming. I think this is really good too. I've heard it say, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. I've also heard eat the frog first, which is something I got from Leah Tanit over at Pineapple Support. But it's just like do the hard thing little by little, as far as the elephant analogy goes. Or if you're using the eat the frog first metaphor, it's kind of like do the hardest thing first to get it out of the way. But both of those, combinations of advice are really powerful because everything we do is just baby steps of a bigger thing we're trying to accomplish. So breaking big, scary, daunting things down into little bite-sized pieces makes them much more consumable for us, makes us much more actionable on them. And I think that is excellent, excellent advice. Ruby Lynn shared with CEO Society that when she's feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, she repeats this mantra: if it's going to be, it's up to me, because no one can do my work, nor do I have the size business to bring in help at the moment. I love that mantra because things do really begin and end with us in any kind of entrepreneurial role. So as an adult creator, it's the same thing. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, you are responsible for your business, for the size of your business, the success of your business. No one's going to do it for you. No one can film for you. There's just parts of this that really come down to us and our discipline. But remember, discipline is a loving thing and consistency relies on the systems, not your mood. So these, are real creators building real businesses and they're showing up imperfectly, but intentionally. And I want to drive home, like, you don't have to be a machine. You just need to keep your momentum. And so if you want to see, the other 20 plus comments that were on this specific post inside CEO Society, when you get inside the close community, just type in the top search bar, how do you keep showing up when you're over it? And it'll bring you right to this post. And you can read the 20 plus comments from all the other creators who added what works for them in there. And it's a gold mine. There's so many gems. So I hope you guys really consider it. The other tool you can use, and this is something I've done at different seasons of my business, is like a 5-minute reset method. So you'll set a timer, for 5 minutes, and you'll just choose one task, only one, and you'll start it. Even if you don't feel like it, you will just start it because often, even after that 5 minutes has ended, you'll want to keep going. And even if you don't, that's okay. You still showed up and you got it done. This kind of breaks that all or nothing loop we talked about earlier too, and it helps you to rebuild trust with yourself. It's a variation of the Pomodoro method, at its core. And I find it's very useful because typically I seem to realize that it's the initial getting started that is my fail point. So if I just sit down and get started, the rest will kind of happen naturally. It's just that getting started that seems to be so daunting. So I found this to be a very useful trick. Personally, I do time tasks when I'm sitting at my desk doing admin work. And I also found, and I don't know if this is just a me thing, but that timing it with a kitchen timer that literally ticks is way more effective for me than like doing an iPhone timer. I don't know. It's like, I think that constant ticking for me is like a constant reminder that I'm up against the clock and then therefore I get more done. So I don't know if that'll help you, but that's been super useful for me as well. Ultimately, I think the thing to remember is that you all listening to this and all tuning in for this, you started this journey as an adult creator to create freedom, right? You did it to create freedom of time or freedom of expression or freedom from control. But freedom isn't free. It's built through structure and habits and showing up even when it's hard. And you don't need to be perfect at it. You don't need to be productive every single day, but you do need to believe in your future self enough to keep going in these moments. In fact, you owe it to them. You owe it to the version of you who started this dream in the first place. So whether today is one of your strong days or your soft days, whatever it is, I'm proud of you just for listening and learning and leading yourself. Just consuming this content is an investment in your future self. It's you slowly collecting and picking up tools that will make you better today and tomorrow and the next day. So if this episode helped you, I would love for you to share it with another adult creator friend, anyone who just needs a reminder that they're not alone, or also some tools to put in their toolkit that they can absolutely do this. You listening to this, you are the business. And the fact that you are still here means you are stronger than any of your excuses and any of your moods or any of your moments of self-doubt. So thank you so much for tuning in, CEO Squad, and I will see you in the next one.
It would be absolutely incredible if you rated this podcast 5 stars and left a little review. We want to get this podcast to as many adult creators as possible, and you taking a second to leave a couple stars and a review really helps us do that. Thanks so much.